Right, so I found several videos out there on repairing the rear window on a Pontiac Solstice, or maybe even a Saturn Sky. But I thought I'd add one with a few pictures and whatnot. So I'm not saying this is the best video, but it's kind of the steps I went through. Uh, Obviously, turn on audio for this thing because if you don't, you're not going to get anything. So turn on audio. If you don't hear me, I'm circling it. Um, so this is a DIY experience. I do not do this for a living. It worked for me, so that's why I'm sharing it. So I'll always share things that worked for me. Um, but you may find better ways to do this. So these are the tools that I used. I'm not going to read through each of these. You can pause the screen. I am going to go through each one individually here in a minute, but that's the tools. So the first thing I had to have was a drop light, and the reason you have to have this, you know what, it could be a drop light, it could be whatever makes light. But the only way I could find to do this project was with the top up. I couldn't put the top back because the window, as you guys know, when you put your top down, the window kind of gets squished into the top. So without removing it from the frame or taking the entire top out, the only way I could do it was with the top up, and I needed a light for the interior. The adhesive I decided to go with is 3M window weld. There's the part number 08609. Got that on Amazon. And the type I've got is used with a caulk gun. The primer that you should use with this window weld is called a 3M single step primer, and there's the part number for that. I also got that on Amazon. It was recommended on many of the forums and in YouTube videos that this clamp set can make it much easier, and I have to admit it was pretty easy using this clamp set. So I got this off Amazon. There's the model number. It's a Sealy 6-piece suction clamp set. And I had to have basically a standard caulk gun. I didn't use that one, but it's the only picture I had. A pair of needle nose pliers. Used with cotton balls to apply the 3M primer because it doesn't come with any way to apply it. Some cotton balls, glass cleaner, and paper towels. And then these magnets. So I used magnets in some areas where, holding things together, I couldn't do it with the clamps, or maybe I didn't have enough clamps. You'll see I have many pictures in here showing how I use them. But I got these magnets at Harbor Freight. And this part number here, the 98406, I think that's Harbor Freight's part number, maybe. It's an item number. It's this red pack. And those things are pretty strong and pretty cheap. I think they were $1.99 maybe. Maybe less than that, honestly. I can't totally remember. But I recommend picking up some magnets. So this is the problem I was having. You can see here that my window, really, it wasn't that it was I had giant gaps. It was just falling down in the back, especially on the passenger side here. You can see that this section of the window on the top, this light gray material is actually on the window itself, so that's not part of the canvas convertible top. This part here, a little bit next layer up, let's call it, that's actually part of the canvas top that's unfurling from the top. It's become disconnected up here, which is why the glass is falling. And this is a closer view of that. This is the portion that's on the window. I had a gap here where it had completely disconnected, but you can see the window is way further down than it should be, and it was actually impacting the trunk from opening. So that's the problem I was having. And I have this shot here because there's two, how do I explain this? This is the canvas top, this is the glass, and then there's this material. I don't know what to call that material, but it is shinier basically than the canvas top. And this is what you're going to apply. We actually apply the adhesive, the 3M window weld, to the window, and then this material will be glued or adhered to the window, so the window well goes between this glass and this material here. My problem that I have to repair first in this video is that this material is actually becoming detached from the canvas top. You can see a little bit of it right there, but it was really all across the top, and I didn't know it until I got into the project. So the first thing I did is, this has a rear window defroster, and I went ahead and unhooked that because I didn't want wires being pulled while the window was, down in the car or wherever the window was going to go. So I just disconnected those. And this is another shot of that material that's attached to the canvas top, whatever this strip is here. I don't know what that material is, but that's just another shot but on the top. And you can see on this window in my car, it had it was really disconnected all the way across the top. You couldn't tell it by looking at it, but it had disconnected. I just thought this was a better shot of what you're going to be dealing with if you go to do this project. And this is the interior. So on the interior of the car, what I decided to do to repair this strip, to get it back onto the canvas top, I decided to just use the 3M window weld that I purchased for the window repair itself. And it worked out pretty well. I wouldn't tell you to use it. So and you can see where this strip was glued up here before, and it's just come loose, and it doesn't look like very much. I would like to think there was more up here, but maybe it's just eroded. I don't know if that's the right word. But I repaired all of this with the window weld. And so the first thing I had to do is, this is the primer, the 3M one-step primer. It does have a little ball in it, so you want to shake it. I don't know what it says on the instructions, but you shake it some, get the ball moving around. There's no applicator that comes with it, so what I did is I took that pair of needle nose pliers and a cotton ball, removed the top, and this stuff is pretty strong smelling, so you want to probably use it in a well ventilated area. Using the needle nose pliers on the cotton ball, I just dipped it down in there to apply it to the window, or to this fabric. And I took the single step primer and I applied it to the back of the strip and the canvas top, just because anywhere I'm going to use the 3M window weld, and I'm using it in this application, I'm using the primer. So that's all we're doing here, is I am repairing the top before I can actually repair the glass. So I applied that primer all through here, right? And it dries in 5 minutes. It's pretty quick. It's jet black though. I did put some tape down and some towels down to not get it on the interior of the car. But it goes on pretty easy. It's not a big deal at all. So the next part was the window weld. So all I wanted to do on this second part, so I've already got the primer on, you can't see it here, there's a little, I don't know, you pop a top on the bottom of this thing, and then you poke a hole up here, and it comes with an applicator cone. Now, for applying this window weld in this small area, I didn't cut the cone at all. I just let it, come out of this small hole in the end of it, because I didn't think I needed a lot. I mean, really, there's not a lot of weight here. It is going to hold the glass up, but it had very little to begin with, and it seems to have worked out quite well. So all I did was, using the applicator cone, not cut it all, is kind of did a zigzag pattern all through here, and then kind of grabbed this material and pushed the two together. And I had to do this all around the top and around the side to do this repair. So you may have to do it in different areas, I don't know, but this is just where I had to do it. But once again, I didn't cut anything off of that. Once I got the window weld on there, and this is where I used the magnets. So I took the magnets and just hooked two together on either side of the fabric to kind of hold it together overnight. And I used these round magnets down here on the end. It doesn't matter that they're round. There's no special application here. It's just I had those, so I used them. It's just like these clips here. I had some, so I threw them on there. I don't think any of these matter, but the magnets sure help, I'm pretty sure. Um, and don't panic on the window weld. You actually have, and I'll say this again later, you have like 10, 15 minutes that you can kind of move it around a little bit. It's not like super glue. It's not instantly going to cure. Um, so take your time, don't take forever because it will start setting. But basically, I did the primer. I did the window weld between these two pieces of fabric just to get my strip back up there, and pinned it down with the magnets. And we waited 24 hours before we did anything else, just because I wanted it to cure. Now this is the outside shot of what I just showed you from the inside. That's just the magnets that you were seeing on the inside. While you have this up, this glass, interestingly, I didn't know this. The glass I told you earlier has a piece of fabric on it itself, and it was on there pretty tight. I didn't have to mess with that at all. But this fabric is actually attached to the canvas top, so the window doesn't just fall out. It's actually held up by these canvas straps over here. But now's a good time to get that glass cleaner out and clean the window, because you can't have all this dirt and muck and stuff on there when you're trying to put an adhesive on anything, obviously. But so now's a good time to do that, clean everything up, and just wait for this to dry. So this is the next day, and you can see it looks. I was very impressed with how this all came together, repairing that strip I was showing you that's on the back side of this. Came out really clean. It was stuck really well, and our next steps were just getting the glass in there and getting prepped. So but that's just a snapshot of the next day after the window weld had set. So what we're doing here is I took painter's tape and I applied to the window on the edges of this black area, because the black area is where we're going to put the window weld, and we also have to put the primer. The primer, like I told you before, it's just really black. It's a really dark color, black as ink. And I didn't want to get it on the window, so I used the painter's tape to go along the edges to get it, just to protect the window, I guess, a little bit. And this is a note. I circled this as a note. Since you're going to be working back here a lot, it's a good idea maybe to put a blanket or something over your rear quarter panel. If you're wearing jeans or you have a belt on or a zipper on your clothes, man, you can scratch the crap. I did it. I know. You can scratch the side of your car up pretty bad. So I have moving blankets up there. So you can see here where I finished putting the painter's tape on there. And my purpose now is I need to get the one-step primer, and this is all for putting the glass back into the top. So I need to put the one-step primer all along this black area on the glass, because we're going to have adhesive there. And on the underside of this, on the back side of the canvas top, there's that strip I showed you earlier, right? The shiny part. We got to get the primer onto that, because that's the other part the adhesive is going to be attached to. Now, before you actually get the glue, I do recommend that you step through using the clamps. Find out where you want to put your glass. Go ahead and put it up before you put the glue up. And the reason you want to do this, and in our given scenario, what we were going to do is just fix the top first. Once we got because in our minds, and I don't know if this is the right way to do it, but in our minds, once we got this top portion fixed, then these sections would be much easier, because the weight of the glass is actually being held up here, and it worked out pretty well, so I guess it's okay. And so we were going to use the window weld from here basically over to here, and so we did a dry run. So we found where we wanted our clamps to be, and we clamped it all down just like we were actually gluing it, except we didn't have the glue on it. And now all we have to do is loosen the wing nuts on these clamps, let the clamps fall loose, right? Some of them, I think maybe the two end ones we had to take off, but most of them we could just let them fall loose, let the glass lay down, and then we could put the the window weld onto the glass itself. So I'm going to take a step back because I think I had, yeah. So the window weld goes on the dark part of the glass. I think I said that earlier. And I would consider removing the painter's tape at this point. I'll show you why, but in the application we did, I still have painter's tape up underneath the canvas, and I'm going to have a hard time getting that out. And the reason I had the painter's tape on here to begin with was because the primer. Not so much the window weld. I've cut the window weld off since I've done this. I've cut that, I've trimmed it, and it comes off the glass really fairly easy, but the primer doesn't. And now I have painter's tape. So I think you should, if I was to do it again, I would take the painter's tape off at this point. So for gluing it, here's what I did. I cut the cone, the applicator cone up here. I cut it a little bit down to get a bigger flow going. Oh, and by the way, when you're doing this first one, man, it is hard to squeeze. Anyway, so I ran a regular bead right across the glass, across this black part. Right? I didn't apply any to the actual top itself. I just put, a regular bead of the window weld across this black part. And then I went and got into the interior of the car to hold the glass up to its appropriate height. Right? This is where having a second person really helps. On either side of the window, like I said before, there are two pieces of fabric that I don't know if they're supposed to give a little, because when you put the top down, the window needs to give a little, but I tried to equal those out and then make sure that it looked lined up appropriately on the inside. And then I had the other person go ahead and tighten down the clamps that we had already preset. So if that makes sense, he was on the outside, I got it where I wanted it, and then he just tightened down the clamps. And so we ended up like this. And then we added magnets, just like we did for when we were repairing the canvas top, for just some areas maybe that we had bigger spaces on. But since we already had the clamps already set, it was pretty easy. But I can tell you, having him there to help me out was just a big deal. You can see this. Here's the primer. It's black. You can kind of see it on there. So we let this set overnight. Basically, it's supposed to cure in 24 hours. I don't know if we gave it that total amount of time. It may have been 18 hours or something, but it was pretty solid when I came back the next day. So what we decided to do on the second day is, now that this part's attached and we're solid and good to go, we could, there's one thing I forgot to mention. Down here that night when it was curing, I did put a towel underneath the glass just to kind of get everything level and take all the weight off the glass, just so I was pretty sure it would, gravity wouldn't impact me there. So the next day, we decided just to do the entire rest of the window, and it was not bad. So same application, we went ahead and set the clamps up where we wanted them, right? And you can see we had to trim out painter's tape, another pain in the butt. That's why it's another good idea to take it off. So we did a dry run just like we did before. Got our clamps where we wanted them. Used our magnets where we thought we were going to need magnets. The only note I would give you on this is, because there's so many curves around these windows, just make sure you can get the fabric flat onto the glass, right? And then put your clamps down, and you can see a little bow right there, and maybe a little hump right here. You will eventually get it lined up, and the cool thing is, don't panic with the window weld. You got a few minutes before it really starts setting. So maybe even 10, maybe 15 minutes. It's kind of a gooey, rubbery application more than like a hard glue like you would think. But so just get everything straight, do your presets, and then once again you loosen up your clamps, put your glue in, right? Because we've already primered it. Put your glue in all the way around as best you can, and then I went on the interior of the car again, just to hold or push the glass forward so he could tighten down the clamps. So he tightened down the clamps, and it was pretty much for the second half of getting the glass in. And this is where we ended up putting some additional magnets just to kind of hold this piece up to the glass. Magnets work pretty well. So this is a close-up. You can see that the window well does squirt out some. I think that's okay, and I'll show you a second here because you can trim that and it's fine, but you can see I also have painter's tape behind that, which is terrible. But that's what it looks like, and there's plenty squirted down on the other side too. Like I said, that bead I put across there is a 1/4 inch bead maybe. It's just another up-close shot of it coming out the back. So this is where I've trimmed it. So I trimmed the window weld right there. It's a nice clean gray line, and over here it's not trimmed. So consistency would be nice, but you know, it was my first time. I don't know. I'm hoping you guys can learn from this video, or I can give you some lessons I learned. So consistency is good, but you know, when you're trying to get your window in, just trying to get your window in. At the end of the day, it turned out really well, I thought. This is before I trimmed anything. I mean, I still got painter's tape up in here, and I haven't trimmed, you know, any of the window weld out of the edges. But it came out okay, and the window is really tight. It's really snug. I think the window weld does a good job in this application. So what are the lessons I learned in this? The job's not as difficult as I feared. I was worrying that you know, using this glue is going to do it wrong. It's going to make a mess. It's just going to be you know, far worse than the window just fell out. It was not. Having another person, very helpful though. I mean, if you get another set of hands in there, it's got to just cut the time in half to do this thing. I'll say this again: window weld is not like super glue. You put it on there, and you got time to move stuff around. Like if your glass is not straight, I think it's total. I think you have like 10 to 20 minutes or something before it really starts to stiffen. Maybe a little bit less than 20. Maybe it's 15 minutes. And the whole thing takes 24 hours to cure. The window weld little goes a long way. I put a 1/4 inch bead. You saw it was coming out. And if you're not looking for the stuff to be coming out, that's fine. Maybe you can use a little less, or maybe do a test area. You know, up to you. The painter's tape, I think if I did it again, I would remove it after the primer. It's a good idea to set the suction cup clamps where you want them before you weld. It's that simple. That's just the best way to do it. So you leave the suction cup on and just loosen the clamps. Take your time. Just take your time with this and you'll be fine. So I did want to show, this is why in this picture you can see that painter's tape right there. And this painter's tape, you can't see it from the outside, but I can see it from the inside, but I can't cut it off from the inside because it's the other side of the glass. So that's why I recommend taking that painter's tape off after the primer. Or just don't use it, maybe. So yeah, I'm hating that part of it. But everything else went really well. So I hope you get something from this. You know, maybe just some takeaways or some images, or maybe just a better idea of what the fabric is like around the window. Hope it helps you out. So if it does, throw a like out there. I appreciate it.